So right now, Zoom is actually setting up the stream for us, but sometimes you actually start broadcasting before that hits. So here, let's see
We'll
how.
be careful. We won't say anything bad about anybody.
Yep, we won't do that. I don't. Did we ever do that? No, of course not. I'll tell you what. So right now, Zoom is actually setting up the stream for us, but sometimes you actually start broadcasting before that hits, and it did. So okay, so all right, Shep, I'm really excited you're here. We're here for the CX Midday Spark. Now, hold on, let me start this right here. So Shep Hyken's joining us today for the CX Midday Spark, which is powered by Pace. And we're going to talk about something that for me, as I've been exploring the past couple of days, looking at different research that's available, which has become very important. You and I have kind of touched on this in the past, Shep, but it's like, what are three questions that every CX leader must accurately answer today? Because there's been such a shift. You thankfully contributed to our Black Friday survival guide with so many other experts. And I think our focus has shifted. I just looked at some research report for software providers and demand generation and solutions and organizations adopting and implementing solutions. And so there's really three things I have identified, and I want us to discuss and maybe get your thoughts on that. So first of all, for me, it's, are we solving the right customer problems? Because they're different than they were a year ago.
Okay. And so we would take one at a time, or do we?
Let's do it. And
Sure. Yeah.
Your additional thoughts on this too.
Yeah. I mean, are we solving the right customer problems? Well, first of all, I think problems are evolving all of the time. And our goal is to eliminate or mitigate these problems. And we have an exercise that we do in our training programs where we ask everybody to list out what are the biggest problems, complaints you hear from your customers. And then how often do they happen? And what have you done to curb them, fix them, eliminate them, if anything at all? And if you haven't, what are you going to do? So basically, that's the gist of the exercise. And then what we do is we have everybody go into groups and come up with like their top 3 or 4, and then we list them on the board so we can see what they all are. We might come up with 7 or 8. Some are pretty obscure. Some are very specific to an issue that could happen based on, maybe a customer didn't pay and that triggers, and that's a problem, but that's a controllable problem in the sense that it wasn't due to a defect or a question or issue that the customer had. So anyway, I digress. The point is, we don't try to take on all at once. We only try to take maybe 2, 3 at the most. Sometimes it's just 1. And then we come back 3 months later and say, where are we now with that one? Has it been pushed down the list, or is it still at the top of the list? And then we start working our way through that list. The goal being that over time, we're going to see an adjustment made to the problems. One of the things that drives me crazy is when somebody says, they have a problem. Well, how often does that happen? It happens all the time. Oh, why is it happening all the time? You know about it. What can you do to fix it, eliminate it? Sometimes it needs customer education, so that might be in the success or onboarding of a product, depending upon the kind of business you're in. Anyway, I know that's a long-winded question, but if we don't know what our problems are, what's the customer's perception of what our problems are, we can't fix them. And we need to fix them, and we need to constantly look at them. This isn't a one-time thing. It's every few months, look at it, evaluate it. In some cases, you might be looking at even more frequently than that.
Okay. No, and when you're talking, I start thinking about kind of like self-reported and self-identified and maybe conveyed problems that customers are perceiving, right? I mean, it's conscious, type of thought. But then we also have another side as far as problem solving is concerned, meaning things that they didn't necessarily perceive. I mean, do you see a wide gap and an opportunity to address things that they haven't recognized yet to solve for?
So I'm going to say that if they haven't recognized it, there may be more one-off problems than consistent problems. So if I called you and in an evaluation or a survey of some type, I made the comment that every time I call, I'm always disappointed by how long I have to wait. And if we hear that 60% of our customers are saying the same thing, that's something that needs to get fixed, because we can track. There's all kinds of data out there, depending upon the business and industry you're in, that friction in the process of getting to customer support could eliminate future business with that customer, could destroy future business, could mean, the trust is not there. The first opportunity to switch, they will, but there's no loyalty. Knowing that means you've got to fix it. It's a constant problem. But what if it's somebody that had a problem, you didn't know it was out there? Why didn't you know it was there? Maybe it was a one-off. Maybe it's just something that's really specific. Like right now, I read an article just today that Target is doing really, really well because they are pretty much all things to all people right now. You can go to Target and buy everything and never have to go anywhere else. Would you agree with that?
I would.
Yep. So with that in mind, other retailers are looking about how they can be the one thing to all people. Well, here's the thing. The pandemic forced us as consumers to look for that type of convenience because we didn't want to go to 5 different stores to pick up. I didn't want to go to a grocery store, the drugstore, the department store to get my kids' clothes, whatever. Wouldn't it be great if I could go all in one spot, right? And Target didn't change their model to accommodate COVID-19. But now we're seeing that companies out there are making they're making long-term decisions on short-term problems. I'm thinking that this time next year, COVID is a history lesson, okay? I think as we move into the first quarter of next year, we're going to start to see vaccines come around. The health and safety of individuals will always be concerned, but won't be out of fear, and people are going to be more comfortable going back to some of their old shopping habits. They've learned some new ones, by the way, that they love and they will not go back to. But the company like Target, that's all things to most people, and maybe not all people, but most people, didn't have to change their whole business plan to accommodate them. Yet I see the danger in companies who are trying to compete at that level. And that's where we've got to look at the problems we're having right now with customers. Back to your original question, is this a problem that's going to go away once we get back to business as usual? Or is this something that we need to be aware of is going to be permanent? And it's really hard to determine sometimes what those are, because what's happened with the consumer today, and really any type of customer, B2B or B2C, is they've adjusted to a new way of doing business. And the question is, do they like it enough to stay with it, or are they going to go back when given the opportunity? Many of these new ways of doing business are going to remain permanent when this whole thing is over. We just have to be smart enough to know which one those are, which one of them are the ones that will. I said that right. Yeah.
Correct. And that was part of my second question, which is, are we accurately assessing the need on what we're trying to help customers solve for? Near term, long term, that was some of the issue you mentioned, survey, and I think there's a process that we all have to go through in order to make sure that we're solving the right problem. Then the third one is, are we accurately evaluating our ability to solve the problem? And I think you kind of were answering that when you were talking about
with that assessment at the beginning when you sit down with your team. Yeah. So let's talk about that first one. Are we accurately assessing the need for what we're trying to help customers solve? We may be assessing the need for the moment. So keep that in mind. We really have to keep a look at, and this, by the way, usually you can track data over time. There's AI that can support you. But what's happened is with COVID, we hit a brick wall and it scattered everything. And I think that we're finally trying to figure out what's the trend right now. And AI can certainly help that. Any type of good survey and the ability to take a look at that survey and understand what's happening will help you. But you've got to really look at trends now differently than you did 6 or 8 months ago, because there wasn't this whole change in the way we do business. So I think retailers are going to really have to get smart and figure out what their customers really want, what they're going to continue to want, what changes are they willing to make permanent, and what changes do they want to eliminate and go back to the old way of doing business. We never had those questions to ask ourselves before. So, and I'm here to tell you, I don't have all the answers. I'm just going to make you think about them.
What you're talking about for me is like, okay, so now we need to measure more than we did before and pay attention to that. But then it's harder to get people to participate and give their feedback. I mean, it's like, so then therefore, are we, taking and making changes with a higher risk value associated with them? I mean, so how do we reduce the risk?
So, well, I think you're right. People are, I mean, we're surveying our customers to death. So if you're going to survey, give a good, short, quick survey that gives you some answers. Put together a focus group of customers and look at a good cross section and be very, very careful with what they tell you, because, tell them we are paying you, we're buying you a nice dinner, or we're giving you whatever for you to be honest with us. Just because if we don't, like, if you like us and we tell you to please join our survey, you're going to try to give us answers that make us feel good. But if you like us and we pay you to be blatantly honest, hopefully you're going to say, that payment means they want me to be truthful. And really, you've got to get to the truth and the crux. But I need you to be very careful. You, as in the audience that's listening today. Let me share with you a story. Harvard Business Review talked about Walmart a number of years ago when they were listening to their customers. They had focus groups, they had surveys, and they determined that it was time to do a facelift to their stores. The customers were complaining about, the aisles were too close together. The lighting might not have been right. How much merchandise seemed cluttered. And anyway, it was not for the best experience. And they listened to the customers. And then instead of going out to all of their stores, they took just 2 or 3 and they did an upgrade. And they did exactly what the customers were asking for. And they created this store of the future. Or actually, for Walmart, it's the store of today compared, because I don't think they've done a lot to bring things up to time, which, by the way, they don't have to. It's what they have is just exactly what everybody expects. And the feedback from the customers was amazing. It was just what they had hoped for, except for one important point. Sales didn't change. Okay, so the point of that story is, and by the way, so smart that they only did it with a couple, 3 stores and not, hundreds of stores or all of the stores. The point I'm trying to make is that when you think your customers are asking for something and they may be telling you the absolute truth, if it doesn't move the needle on sales, you need to really consider whether or not this is the right prudent move to make. No doubt you should stay contemporary, make people feel like, they're comfortable, but at a cost of what? And right now, more than anything, we need to listen to our customers and give them what they need as much as what they want, if not even more so what they need.
Yeah, I think the whole needs identification has taken on a very different context than it had before in the past, where a need, we may think that it was more, emotional desire as far as, this is what they need. And I think rethinking that's going to be something going on into 2021 and into 2022 is going to change a lot of the decisions that organizations make. And hopefully we'll see, though, a lot more testing to see what things do pay off or pay out.
Yeah, let's see that. And I think more than ever, we listen to our customers. I mean, really pay attention to what they're saying in the surveys, informal and formal comments they're making. Always ask that open-ended subjective question. I mean, we want to know on a scale of 0 to 10, would you recommend us? And if the answer is 10, ask why. If it's low, why didn't you give us a higher score? Find out what's behind the motivation of the number that they give you. And that will help tremendously. But if you give them a survey that takes 15 or 20 minutes, don't expect to get the answers that you really need to get, because many people just won't do it. Those are the ones you need to have them do it.
That's true. Okay, so it's more qualitative data and use it more effectively.
Yes.
All right, so Shep Hyken, thank you very much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom in this brief CX Spark. You've given us things for us to think about so that we can ignite that CX celebration.